Some children are so devoted, they remind their mother about the mortgage before she's even unplugged from life support. I lay in the hospital bed having just undergone a heart procedure. My chest felt as if a concrete slab had been dropped on it. My phone buzzed. My son, Daniel, had sent me a text. "Mom, the mortgage is $1,500 this month. Don't forget to transfer it to my account before the 10th. A wave of dizziness hit me. I nearly dropped the phone. I could barely hold myself up. And he didn't even ask how I was doing. Not a word of concern, just the usual focus on money. My son is draining me like a parasite. The edges of my vision blurred, and the beeping of the monitor seemed to grow louder, more mocking. I stared at the screen in disbelief, hoping, just for a second, that I'd misread the message. But no, it was always the same. That cold, mechanical demand. My chest tightened, not just from the procedure, but from heartbreak. Earlier that day, I'd blacked out briefly in the hospital bathroom. I hadn't told the nurses. I didn't want to be fussed over, didn't want anyone, not even strangers, thinking I was frail. But the truth clung to my bones. I was no longer strong enough to even trust my own body. Should I even keep him in my life anymore? I'm so exhausted living like this. The hospital room reeked of antiseptic. I'd just finished a full round of tests. My body felt completely depleted. The words on my phone glared at me, cold and sharp like blades. "Mom, we're just getting started and the financial strain is overwhelming. Could you support us for just 3 years? Just 3. We'll definitely pay you back once we're stable." That was the song Daniel and his wife, Marissa, had sung, trying to win me over. They had just bought a new home, $1,500 in monthly payments. The plan was simple. I would help cover them for 3 years. Then they'd take over. But 3 turned into 5. My monthly retirement income is only $2,000, and their mortgage is crushing me. I've burned through all my savings just to stay afloat. There were nights I went to bed with a knot in my stomach, not from hunger, but from fear. Fear that the next month I wouldn't be able to cover both their needs and my own. Every dollar I sent chipped away at the years of hard work and saving I'd done. In secret, I took a part-time job with a cleaning service. I mopped floors, scrubbed toilets, did every chore they gave me. I didn't tell anyone, not a soul. I was too ashamed. What kind of man had I raised? His mother's in the hospital and he won't even answer the phone. All he cares about is reminding me to pay. Why the hell am I doing this? Marissa used to slather on the sweet talk. "Clara, you're the best mom in the world. Daniel is your son. If you don't help him, who will? We'll pay you back, we promise. Pay me back? At this rate, I won't live to see the day." My grip on the phone tightened until I nearly broke it. My fingers went numb. A surge of nausea hit, and I turned my head, breathing deeply. Not long after, the door creaked open. Daniel and Marissa finally managed to visit. Marissa was holding a small plastic bag of apples, the kind that looked like they came from the clearance rack at the supermarket. "The parking here is insane," she complained the moment she walked in. $5 for just half an hour. Daniel came over to the bed and muttered a flat, "Hey Mom, you feeling better?" But before I could reply, he added, "Did you get the mortgage money ready? Don't make it late." Marissa chimed in, "Yeah, Clara, things are tight for us too. Ryan's preschool just raised tuition." She paused, then added, "But your insurance should cover most of this, right?" Translation: pay your own damn bills. Don't even think about asking us for help. I looked at them, and my heart just sank. Marissa kept going, "Clara, you really need to recover soon. We're so busy with work, and Ryan needs me at home. We can't be at the hospital constantly." Message received, "Don't expect care or company. Just get well soon so I can keep playing their ATM." Daniel added, "Mom, Marissa may sound harsh, but she cares about you. She really does care. And please don't forget the mortgage, okay?" Care about me? I wasn't even close to recovered, and she was already eyeing my insurance payout. What a son. What a daughter-in-law. Marissa's eyes roamed across the bedside table, as if searching for a stash of cash. Daniel stayed glued to his phone, scrolling non-stop, barely pretending to listen. Most people come to the hospital to offer comfort. They came to make sure the ATM still worked. Not long after they left, Diane came by. Diane was the neighbor girl I had helped years ago. She calls me her godmother. But truth be told, she's more family than anyone by blood. She brought a thermos filled with homemade chicken soup. Clara, how are you feeling? What did the doctor say? She asked gently. She poured the soup and fed it to me, one spoonful at a time, then tucked the blanket around me and helped me lie back down. She even stepped out to the nurse's station to ask about my care instructions. When she returned, she took one look at me and sensed something was wrong. Clara, did Daniel upset you again? I forced a smile. I'm fine, really. Don't worry about me. Some things are too humiliating to share. Diane sighed softly but didn't press. She's always known what Daniel and Marissa are like, but she never pried. It wasn't her place. Clara, you have to say something if Daniel's pushing too far. You can't keep bottling this up. I patted her hand. Diane, I'm just getting old. My body's wearing out. They're young. It's hard for them too. But the words tasted bitter as they left my lips. It wasn't just age or weakness. It was the slow erosion of being dismissed, ignored, and drained until I had nothing left to give, not even the truth. But inside, it felt like I'd swallowed glass. That steaming bowl of soup, compared to those discount bin apples and even colder words, left me aching. It wasn't the soup that warmed me. It was the gesture, the care, the quiet dignity with which Diane looked after me. Her presence reminded me of what compassion used to feel like, before it was replaced by transactions and obligations. What a cruel twist. My own blood looked right through me, while someone unrelated worried whether I'd eaten. The doctor suggested I stay a few more days for observation, but the thought of mounting hospital bills and Daniel's ice-cold tone made me insist on being discharged. Daniel said he was slammed at work, and Marissa claimed there was no one to watch Ryan. Neither had any intention of picking me up. In the end, it was Diane who took a day off from teaching and came to get me. The moment I stepped into the house, the kitchen was icy, no smells of cooking, no trace of warmth. The place felt colder than the hospital. Not a single call from Daniel or Marissa, not even a message to ask how I was doing. Honestly, maybe the silence was a gift. I could take care of myself. But the emptiness pricked like a needle in the softest part of my chest. I ran my hand along the kitchen counter's smooth surface and opened the fridge. A few wilted leaves of spinach. That was it. A house, no matter how nice, is only as warm as the people in it. And a home with no one left is just a shell. Barely 2 days out of the hospital, still weak, Marissa showed up unannounced with Ryan in her arms. The little guy was bursting with energy, his cheeks glowing, not a hint of illness in sight. Marissa walked in and jumped straight to tears. Clara, Ryan had a terrible fever a few days ago. We had to see the doctor twice. It cost us so much. Could you please lend us $500 to get by? She dabbed at her eyes, but no actual tears fell. The doctor said he needs top-shelf medication. We don't really have a choice. Mom, you wouldn't just stand by and let your grandson suffer, would you? I looked at Ryan's bright, healthy little face, and my heart melted. He was my grandson, after all. The modest pension I'd just received was supposed to cover the mortgage, but I clenched my jaw, pulled out $500, and handed it to her. My hand shook as I gave it to her, not from weakness, but from everything I couldn't say. Marissa's face lit up the second the cash hit her hand. She tossed out a few hollow thank yous and hurried out with Ryan. Didn't even stay for a glass of water. That flicker of satisfaction when she took the money, I saw it, plain as day, and still I swallowed it. That was my only income for the month. Now that I'd given her the money, what about the mortgage? Was I supposed to go begging again? To them? I wasn't a mother anymore. I was a walking, talking bank account. Because of that $500, I missed the mortgage deadline. The bank contacted Daniel directly, and he called me right after. The second I answered, he exploded. Mom, why hasn't the mortgage been paid yet? The bank just called me. Are you seriously going to abandon us now? He sounded like he'd swallowed a stick of dynamite. Marissa chimed in from the background, her voice shrill and cutting. Clara, what are you trying to do? This could wreck our credit score. Then, as if that wasn't enough, she dragged my long-deceased mother-in-law into it. Daniel's grandma used to say, a real mother always puts her son first. What you're doing now? It's just plain selfish. I was shaking so badly, I could barely get a word out. You know exactly where that $500 went, and you have the audacity to use the dead to guilt-trip me? I'll get it covered soon, I rasped. My voice barely a whisper, my vision blurred. I sat in the silence after the call. staring at the wall like it might give me answers. The shame was suffocating. My body felt old, worn, like something the world had used up. After I hung up, my hands were trembling so violently I couldn't even hold a glass of water. My heart clenched again, sharp and stabbing. I stared at the photo of Harriet, my late mother-in-law, hanging on the wall, and bitterness swelled in my throat. I had spent my life raising a son who turned out like this, and still he believed I hadn't sacrificed enough. To patch the hole I'd just blown into my finances, I swallowed my pride and went to see Bernard Cray, an old colleague from the clinic. He lived in one of those pre-war apartment buildings. Narrow stairwells, steep climbs. I stood outside his door longer than I should have, debating whether to knock. My reflection in the hallway mirror looked older, smaller, humbler than I remembered, but I had no choice. Pride doesn't pay mortgages. By the time I reached his floor, I was nearly gasping for air. When I told him why I had come, he paused, and his face flickered between pity and disbelief. He lent me the money anyway, but there was something odd in his tone. "Clara, your son's nearly 40. Why are you still the one handling his mortgage? Don't you think it's time you started living for yourself?" His words slapped me straight across the face. I forced a smile. Yeah, this was just a little bump in the road. It won't happen again. But inside, I was bleeding. Would it really not happen again? When would it end? The sunlight outside Bernard's building was so harsh I could hardly keep my eyes open. Across the street, neighbors were chatting in pairs and small groups, their voices low, but their words stung like tiny knives. Didn't she retire? Why is she still borrowing money? She's old, still getting used and stepped on by her own son? That's just sad. I felt like a walking joke in the name of motherhood. I had stripped myself bare, even my last shred of dignity was wearing thin. Once I finally scraped together enough to cover the mortgage, I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd get a few days of peace. A few days later, I made a fresh batch of orange marmalade and thought I'd drop it off at Daniel's. The moment I stepped through the door, Marissa rushed over practically glowing. "Clara, oh my gosh, we just saw the most incredible house." She waved her phone like a baton, flashing pictures and layout designs. Top neighborhood, 5 minutes from Brookdale Elementary. Can you imagine Ryan growing up there? He'd be Ivy League bound for sure. Her eyes sparkled, not with joy but ambition. The price tag on that place could knock the wind out of anyone, and they didn't have a cent for the down payment. Then right on cue, she turned to me with that familiar, calculated smile. "Your old place is kind of small and outdated, Clara. Why not sell it to help us with the down payment?" She smiled sweetly. "You could move in with us, you'd help with Ryan, and we'd take care of you. A win-win." Daniel chimed in like they'd rehearsed the whole scene. "Yeah, Mom, it's really for Ryan. You're always alone anyway." The chill I felt then didn't come from the air conditioner. It came from their words. That little house they were so eager to toss aside? It was the only home I had ever built with my late husband. The one piece of my life that still felt untouched, mine. And now, they wanted to uproot me, squeeze out the last bit of my value and label it love. Let's be honest, what they really wanted was a live-in babysitter they didn't have to pay. Marissa shoved her phone closer, flipping through glossy real estate photos, gushing about the natural light, the open layout, the resale value. She didn't even bother to mask the greed in her face. But I wasn't looking at that house. I was picturing my own. The curtains I had sewn by hand. The rug I'd bought on clearance and vacuumed every Sunday. The creaky wooden chair I refused to toss out because it still held the shape of my husband's back. It was all just square footage and equity. I didn't say yes, not right away, and that didn't sit well. They started coming by more often, always just to chat, but the topic never changed. One day they even showed up with a trunk full of groceries. Marissa beamed, voice syrupy sweet. "Clara, let's have a nice family dinner tonight. We've got something important to talk about." I knew exactly what the important thing was. Same pitch, different day. Sell the house. Over dinner they tag-teamed like seasoned pros. One minute it was Ryan's future, the next it was guilt. "If you're not comfortable with this, we might not be able to bring Ryan over as often," Marissa said with a shrug. Translation: agree or forget about seeing your grandson. I couldn't swallow a single bite. My chest felt like it was filled with wet cement, so I said nothing. Marissa leaned in, smile frozen in place. Clara, just think of it as doing this for Ryan, okay? He's your grandson. If you don't help now, he'll grow up resenting you. Daniel chimed in, eyes glued to his phone. Come on, Mom. Stop being so stubborn. That old house of yours isn't worth much anymore. Let's get something newer. We could all live together. It'd be fun. Fun? This wasn't about family. This was a setup, and they were using Ryan as bait. Marissa dropped piece of chicken breast into my bowl like it was an act of care, all while lacing her words with guilt like poison. Daniel barely spoke, only nodding when Marissa needed backup. There was no warmth at that table, just tactics. The wine they poured didn't taste like love. It tasted like control. And for the first time, I felt like a lamb being led to slaughter at my own dinner table. Every word dripped with manipulation, every gesture calculated. That night, lying in bed, I kept hearing their voices, echoing like a jury reading a verdict. I got up, stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The wrinkles seemed deeper, the lines harsher. I touched my cheek and whispered to myself, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm just a burden now. For a moment, I hated my age. I hated needing help. I hated that I still wanted to be loved. The stress had been bubbling up for weeks, and that night it finally broke me. The next day I was hit with a pain so sharp I couldn't breathe. At the ER, they diagnosed me with acute gastritis. I was severely dehydrated, vomiting, too weak to sit up. Lying in bed, dizzy and drained, I managed to call Daniel. He heard my weak voice and said flatly, "I've got clients this week. I'll have Marissa check on you." The second he hung up, something inside me splintered. It was the sound of something breaking, quiet, but irreversible. Hours later, Marissa showed up. The moment she walked in, she wrinkled her nose. "Oh my God, what is that smell?" She tiptoed in with gloves on, poured me a glass of water with the mechanical grace of a nurse, but the coldness of an insurance adjuster. For a second I thought maybe she was finally showing care. Then she sat on the edge of my bed, voice light and airy. "Clara, let's be honest. You're not as strong as you used to be. Maybe it's time to start, making arrangements." She smiled the whole time, but her eyes kept drifting to my desk drawer. I knew exactly what she was after, the deed and the old passbook. Then came the casual question, smooth as butter. "Oh, by the way, where do you keep that old savings account? Is the password still your birthday? You really shouldn't be handling all this stuff alone. What if something happened?" She trailed off, but I got the message loud and clear. "Make a will. Sign it over." Now, I stared at her face, expectant, eager, and my heart turned to ice. She wasn't there to care for me. She was there to take inventory. I wasn't her mother-in-law. I was a ledger, a document to be balanced, signed, and sealed. My body felt heavier by the second, but my soul had already gone numb. From the bed, I could hear her in the kitchen, clinking dishes like she owned the place. The drawer was still open, the papers inside still rumpled from her touch. She came back smiling, said she had to leave. Ryan had art class. I nodded. Didn't stop her. Once she closed the door, I forced myself up and walked to the drawer. I placed every document back one by one. When I touched the deed, my fingers shook. The edges were creased. She had handled it. I stared at the line that read, "Owner, Clara Woods." They weren't waiting for me to recover. They were waiting for me to lose everything. I didn't sleep a minute that night. The diarrhea wouldn't stop, and my stomach felt like it had been scraped raw with steel wool. Even lifting my head to sip water took everything I had. Alone, I dragged myself out of bed, slippers damp and thin, and knelt in the bathroom to clean the mess off the floor. Cold water seeped from my wrists all the way to my chest. The house was so silent it echoed. I could hear the ticking of the wall clock, each second a sharp reminder of how long the night had dragged on. Marissa never came back. Daniel didn't call. I sat on the toilet, staring at the stain I hadn't managed to scrub away, and my mind drifted back over a decade, to when my husband was in the hospital, bleeding out in the middle of the night. I had knelt on that sterile floor, wiping up the blood with tissues, then hauled a bucket halfway full to clean him up and change the sheets. I never once thought it was too dirty or too much. I just did it. But now, a bout of gastritis, and suddenly I was a burden, a drain. How did it come to this? Just as the sky began to lighten, I finally sat down for a moment's rest. That's when the doorbell rang. It was Diane. She stood there holding a paper bag with breakfast, her brows tightening the moment she saw me. "Clara, you don't look right." She placed the bag on the kitchen counter and walked straight toward me. I tugged at my collar, trying to hide the pallor in my face. "It's nothing. I just ate something bad yesterday." She didn't reply. 5 minutes later, she walked out of my bedroom holding a few papers, my prescriptions and insurance forms. She didn't cry, just sighed and said, "What have they done to push you this far?" I didn't answer. I took the papers from her and slid them into the drawer. She sat in the living room while I forced myself to eat a few bites of breakfast. Her eyes watched me quietly. "I know you don't want to be harsh with them," she said finally, pulling a business card from her purse and placing it on the coffee table. "Her name's Melanie. She's a lawyer I trust, specializes in elder asset protection." I glanced at the card. The text was clean, not a letter out of place. "I'm not trying to sue them," I said reflexively. "No one said you had to," Diane replied calmly. "This is about keeping what's yours from being taken right out from under you." I said nothing, because last night, while I was nearly passing out from pain, not one of them asked if I had medicine or even water, but they were quick to circle around my passwords and paperwork like vultures. I stared at the card for a long time. "Can this lawyer actually protect me?" I asked. "She can help you set up a trust," Diane said without hesitation. "Your house, your pension, it all goes in. You decide who has access. You decide who doesn't. And if something ever happens to you, at least your dignity won't be the first thing to go." I nodded slowly, though I didn't say yes. That evening, Daniel and Marissa showed up. They brought flowers and a performance. Marissa waltzed in with a bright smile. "Clara, are you feeling any better? This place could use some fresh air. Let me open a window for you." She floated into the kitchen, chattering as she moved. "Need help tidying up? Oh, and that pharmacy card I grabbed for you the other day, still over by the desk?" I heard her footsteps pause near the drawer where I kept my documents. My stomach clenched into a hard knot. Daniel slumped onto the couch. "Hey, Mom, any chance you can still cover the mortgage this month? You said you weren't feeling well before, and well, things are tight for us." I didn't answer right away. Instead, I went into the bedroom, came back with a folded insurance statement, and handed it to him. I checked with Diane. "I have to pay out of pocket first. Things are a bit complicated right now. You two might need to figure something else out." Marissa reappeared from the study, face unreadable. They stayed a few more minutes, said they had to pick Ryan up from school, and left without touching a bite. As soon as the door shut behind them, I walked over to the table. My folder had been moved. The deed, which I'd tucked all the way at the bottom, was now right on top. The cover of my insurance file had new creases. I stared at that stack of paper for a good 30 seconds. Then I turned, walked back to the sofa, and picked up my phone. "Diane," I said, voice steady and low, "I want to meet that lawyer you mentioned, as soon as possible." Diane was waiting in the car the next morning. The sun was soft and warm. I wrapped myself in a coat and pulled a hat low over my head, looking like I was headed to the grocery store. But we weren't driving to any store. We went downtown to an old office building, no bright signs, just a small brass plaque beside the door that read, "Melanie Cross, Elder Law and Estate Planning." She sat behind a tidy desk, wearing thin-rimmed glasses, her expression calm. Not the aggressive, fast-talking kind of lawyer, more like someone who spoke softly, deliberately. "Ma'am, you're here because you want to protect your home, a right to make decisions for yourself. Is that correct?" I nodded. My heart was racing. "Then we need to establish 3 things," she said. "First, a revocable trust. Everything you own will be moved into it. Second, a healthcare proxy, so that in a medical emergency, decisions are made by someone you trust. And third, a disinheritance clause, clearly stating that your son and daughter-in-law will receive nothing from your estate." She said it plainly, and I heard every word. "Once this is signed," she added, "they won't be able to touch a single cent, even if one day you're unable to speak for yourself." I bit my lip and looked at Diane. She didn't try to convince me. She just gave a quiet nod. "I don't want to take them to court," I said. "You don't have to," Melanie replied, sliding a pen across the desk. "You just have to make sure they never get to hijack your life again." My fingers hovered above the pen. There was a lump in my throat. Not from doubt, but from the years I had swallowed silence, excuses, and guilt. I wasn't just signing papers. I was drawing a line in the sand. My hand trembled as I signed, but I didn't stop. The house, the retirement account, every bank account I could recall, I transferred it all into the trust. Only I knew the password to the new account. I designated Diane as the backup trustee. I asked Melanie to include a clause. Beneficiaries may not transfer or reassign inheritance shares unless personally amended in writing by the grantor. She nodded. "You're thinking clearly," she said. As we were leaving, she handed me a copy of the documents. "This isn't to scare them," she said. "It's just a reminder. You're not leaving anything to chance." The moment I got home, I changed the locks. Found a locksmith who didn't waste time, done in 30 minutes. I gave the only spare key to Diane. Then I closed the old savings account and opened a new one online, with dual passwords and fingerprint authentication. Disabled every automatic family transfer. I placed my prescriptions in a locked cabinet and tucked the key behind an old bottle of oil in the kitchen. Once everything was set, I made myself a cup of tea. Same old house, worn carpet, peeling paint, stacks of newspapers, but for the first time, I knew it belonged to me, and only me. And that single cup of tea, steaming between my palms, felt warmer than every visit they had ever faked. Around dusk, the doorbell rang. It was them. Daniel stood there holding Ryan, smiling, while Marissa carried a pot of soup. "Clara, we were just getting off work nearby and thought we'd drop by," she said with that breezy tone, like nothing had ever happened. "I even made your favorite, chicken soup." I smiled and let them in, offered them tea, played the gracious host. Marissa looked around, her eyes gliding over the dining table, windowsill, desk, then finally landing on the drawer beside my couch. "Mom, let me tidy this up for you. So many letters piled up here," she chirped. Before she could step forward, I said cool and even, "No need, I just sorted it." Her smile faltered. "Oh, right. I think I saw something earlier, something about a trust." I gave her a calm smile. "Yes, just something I set up. Nothing big, just in case I suddenly go. I don't want to burden anyone." Daniel set his teacup down, his expression changing. "Mom, what exactly do you mean, nothing?" I said softly. "Just making sure everything goes where it should, no room for confusion." Marissa's composure cracked for a split second, but she recovered quickly. "Clara, don't be like that. We just came to see you." I nodded. "Then sit a while, but don't touch my things." The air turned to stone. They stayed less than 10 minutes before Marissa said Ryan was getting restless, and they left. I walked them to the door, watched them head down the stairs, and quietly closed it behind them. Then I returned to the kitchen, picked up my knife, and kept chopping vegetables, while the evening news murmured from the old TV. Sunlight fell across the sink, and in that moment, I knew I had finally done the right thing. But as the door clicked shut, my hands trembled slightly above the cutting board. I stared at the half-chopped carrot, and for a brief second, I forgot what I was even making. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It pressed into my back like a weight. I reminded myself, out loud, "You did the right thing." Even then, the ache in my chest didn't go away. Back at home, Marissa exploded. She hurled Daniel's coat onto the couch. "You just sat there sipping tea. She's already moved everything into a trust, and you're still playing the beautiful son." Daniel shut the door behind him, brow furrowed. "Can you not scream in the hallway? The neighbors can hear." Marissa's eyes brimmed with rage. "Do you have any idea? I already spoke with a realtor. After a light renovation, her house could sell for over 400 grand. I even had the design plans drawn up, and now, just like that, a piece of paper and you're not even mentioned?" Daniel took off his coat and sank into the couch, speechless. It's not that he didn't care. It's that for the first time he realized Mom wasn't just being emotional. She meant it. She had cut them out. From beginning to end, she never raised her voice. She only said, "Don't touch my things." But he understood now. That was a boundary. And in all these years, she had never drawn one before. The next day, he came to my house alone. He didn't bring Marissa. No call ahead, just showed up. "Mom," he said, shifting uneasily at the door, "I want to talk." I opened the door and stepped aside to let him in. This time he was quiet. He sat on the edge of the couch, didn't rush into anything. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "Lately, I've been thinking about the past." I stayed silent and poured him a glass of warm water, setting it gently in front of him. Do you remember when I had chicken pox as a kid? You stayed home with me for 2 weeks, even called off your night shifts at the hospital. I still remember that vegetable soup you made. I nodded. I remember. He gave a small, nervous smile. I know Marissa can come off harsh. That's just how she is. And I know I've made mistakes too, but we never meant to hurt you. We've just been under a lot of pressure. I sat down slowly and looked at him. My voice was steady. Did you know that last time she visited, she went through my things? Daniel's smile froze. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again. She thought I didn't notice, I went on. But I saw her flipping through my property deed. 3 times. She even studied the markings on the back of the folder. His head dropped. The water in his glass rippled slightly. I let out a quiet sigh. Daniel, when you had fevers as a kid, I stayed up all night swapping cold towels on your forehead. After you grew up, I bailed you out more times than I can count. I can take being poor. I can take being tired. I can even take being unappreciated. But I will not sit back and smile while you all bleed me dry. He didn't say a word. I've placed the house in a trust, I said. You won't be inheriting a cent after I'm gone. It'll be donated to the local women's shelter fund. There was no anger in my voice. No sadness either, just clarity, a final kindness from a mother who had woken up. Daniel stood up stiffly. So this is revenge? I stood too, meeting his eyes. No, this is protection. He didn't respond. He walked out. The door didn't slam, but it still hit me square in the chest. 2 days later, I got a call. It was a friend from church. Her voice was hushed. Clara, I'm not sure if I should tell you this, but your daughter-in-law has been reaching out to some of our old friends. She's saying you haven't been doing well lately, that maybe your mental state's unstable. She hinted that the family might need to step in. I stayed quiet listening. She asked if you've been forgetting things, if you can still cook for yourself, if anyone's been checking in on you. I gripped the phone tighter, cold shots straight through my spine. She'd made her move, not through the will, not with a lawyer. She was coming for my sanity. I stood frozen in the middle of the kitchen, the phone pressed to my ear, the hum of the refrigerator suddenly deafening. A wave of nausea rolled in. For a moment, I thought I might collapse. I had survived years of quiet neglect, but this was betrayal in its most intimate form. She wasn't trying to take my house anymore. She was trying to take my name, my mind, my dignity. I felt the breath catch in my throat. There it was, the knife hidden behind the fake concern, the subtle poison cloaked in pity. I ended the call and immediately dialed Melanie. I need to add a clause, I said. A guardianship exemption, and a legal trigger. If anyone spreads claims about my mental state, I want the right to sue. Melanie paused on the other end. Then she asked, have they started? I answered, they're already on their way. Then I made a second call, to Diane. I need you to look into something for me. Marissa's been reaching out to people, church members, the preschool, neighbors, whoever. I want every word they say to become evidence for my retaliation. I'm not waiting to be accused. They'll be the ones scrambling. My voice was calm, but my heart was thudding. The betrayal tasted like metal. My mind swirled with names, faces, years of trust that could now be twisted against me. Sunday mornings at church were always quiet. Leaning on my cane, I made my way into the community room behind the main sanctuary. It was the weekly women's group gathering. I hadn't shown up in years, but when they saw me, everyone lit up. One woman offered me her seat, another asked how I'd been feeling, and someone even handed me a cup of lemon tea. Just the way I liked it. I nodded and smiled, chatting easily. It wasn't until the conversation turned to property taxes that I casually dropped the line. Oh, that house. I'm donating it to the local women's shelter. Figured it's better to give women with nowhere else to go a roof over their heads than to leave it to anyone. In particular. A few of them looked momentarily stunned, then smiled and nodded. Clara, you've always had vision, one said warmly. I added, just loud enough. The trust's already in place. Anyone thinking they can come claim it later, too late. It got a round of laughter. I smiled too, but I knew exactly what I was doing. Each word I said was a seed, and I knew Marissa would be choking on the fruits before sunset. The news would reach Marissa in 3 hours tops. Sure enough, not even an hour after I got home, Marissa burst through my front door. "What the hell are you doing, Clara?" she shouted, slamming her hand on the table. Daniel followed behind, pale as a ghost. "Are you out of your mind? You're donating the whole house?" I set down the knife I was using and calmly looked at them, smiling. "Well, you've all been acting like I was dead anyway." Marissa stomped her foot, furious. "That's your son's inheritance. What about Ryan? What happens to him?" I wiped my hands evenly. "Ryan? The last time you took my retirement money, you told me it was for his fever medication. Meanwhile, he was bouncing on the neighbor's trampoline all afternoon." Daniel's face turned stone cold. "You're being unfair, Mom?" "Unfair?" I snapped, tossing a copy of the property deed onto the table. "Did you think about fairness when you were sneaking into my drawer to steal documents?" Marissa lunged for the paper, but Diane stepped out of the hallway, holding up her phone. "I recorded everything," she said calmly. "Don't worry, every word you just said can be played back in court." Daniel froze. I walked over, standing between them. My voice was quiet, but sharp enough to cut glass. "From this moment forward, you're not welcome in my home. I've changed the locks. The trust is now irrevocable. You won't get your hands on this house." Marissa went pale. "You're not afraid we'll sue you?" I gave a cold laugh. "Go ahead. I'd love to bring the unpaid loan records, the surveillance footage of you rifling through my drawers, and this audio recording into court. Let's see who should be scared." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Daniel kept his eyes on the floor. I shoved them out the front door and shut it hard behind them. They were still yelling outside. I turned the lock. Back in the kitchen, the soup was still simmering. I picked up the knife, swept the chopped vegetables into the pot, and stirred, like nothing had happened. But I knew, this time, they were truly out of options. Marissa didn't knock again. But on the third night, the phone rang. It was Daniel. "Mom, can we talk?" His voice was soft, his tone cautious, as if I might hang up at any second. I didn't say anything, just listened. "Ryan's been asking about you," he said. "He doesn't understand why you don't call, why you're not picking him up anymore." I told him you were busy, but really, we were just too aggressive. "Marissa's hot-headed, but she's not a bad person. Mama, he's just a kid, he's innocent." As he spoke, I silently synced the call to Diane through my Bluetooth recorder. When he finished, I gave him only one response. "You remember what you said in my house that day?" I recorded it. There was a pause. "I know, I'm not threatening you. I wonder if there's anything we can do." "There isn't." I shut him off. "Face it, Daniel." Then I hung up. The next morning, my attorney Melanie issued a formal cease and desist letter to both Daniel and Marissa. The subject line read, "Notice of legal action regarding ongoing attempt to control senior's estate." The body provided particular instances, audio descriptions, and document copies. It declared a complete termination of their medical power of attorney and emergency contact powers. It warned of urgent legal ramifications for any further interference or slander. I made my first public statement about it at the following church meeting. I didn't mention any names. I basically declared I'd put my house in irrevocable trust because I was sick of being treated like a walking ATM while still alive. Some applauded. Others remained quiet. A couple others pushed their chairs closer and muttered, "I'm going through the same thing." They started dubbing me the brave one, the woman who held her ground. I was not trying to be admired. I just had enough. That Friday, I personally visited Ryan's school and met with the dean. I explained that I am no longer his emergency contact. I will not pay tuition, medical costs, or anything else. He has parents. It's now their chance to step up. The dean was puzzled but eventually nodded. "Thank you for being clear." Marissa was in the parking lot. As I stepped out of school, she appeared pallid, clutching her phone, and stared at me blankly. She opened her mouth. "Clara." I stopped 2 steps away and looked her in the eyes. "Goodbye, Marissa." She attempted to talk, but I didn't wait. I went away without looking back. That evening, I returned home. There were 2 notices pinned to the front door. One was a formal confirmation of my property contribution to the Women's Center. The other was a description of the trust modification, in my own handwriting. "Following my death, the house will be renamed Helen Place, a sanctuary for women in need." I selected the name carefully. Helen was my mother-in-law. For years, they used her memory to make me feel guilty. Now, her name would be remembered in places where they would never be permitted to go. A few days later, one of the neighbors informed me that Daniel had been discreetly relocated at work. The new HR director, who appeared to be the younger sister of one of his college friends, had heard of his attempts to persuade his elderly mother into handing away her property. He no longer managed the same clients' accounts. Marissa, too, had been chiseled out at church. A couple people approached me and whispered, "She used to say you were mentally unstable, but now everyone knows you're the most level-headed person here." A week later, I moved out of the old house. I did not cry on the day of our move. I did not glance back. Diane assisted me with packing up the photo albums, removing the old calendar board from the fridge, and picking the final rose from the garden. The new abode wasn't enormous, simply a one-bedroom apartment set up by the Women's Center. However, it was full of sunshine. There was a wicker chair by the window. I sat there with a cup of tea, watching the neighborhood youngsters ride their bikes in the breeze. This time, I wasn't waiting for someone to knock on the door. Because now, I understood that door was solely open for me. Dear friend, we all want to believe that love, especially from family, is unconditional. That our sacrifices will be remembered, our kindness returned. But sometimes the people we give the most to are the very ones who drain us dry. Clara's story is not just about a house or a will, it's about reclaiming dignity after years of being used in the name of love. She learned something many of us fear to admit, that peace often begins with a boundary. Stoic philosophy teaches us that the only thing within our control is how we respond. Clara couldn't control her son's greed or her daughter-in-law's manipulation, but she could control her reaction by taking action with clarity and quiet resolve. She didn't scream, she didn't seek revenge, she simply said no more and meant it. Sometimes the most radical form of love is self-respect. Sometimes the greatest legacy we can leave behind is not wealth, but an example of courage, of strength, and of choosing ourselves, even when it's hard. So if you're feeling worn out by the demands of those who never give back, if you're doubting your worth just because others can't see it, let Clara's story remind you. Your value isn't measured by how much you give. It's in knowing when you've given enough. Stand your ground, protect your peace, and never apologize for demanding the respect you deserve. Because healing doesn't always come with hugs and forgiveness. Sometimes it comes with a locked door and a cup of tea you made just for yourself. If this story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs the reminder. And if you want more stories that honor strength, truth, and self-worth, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching.